Hey, welcome to Roaming Minds. I'm Carlos.
I'm AJ, and here we talk about the thoughts that kept us out of all the really good schools. You know, those quiet spirals, the questions that keep you up at night, and the trials and tribulations that we all face as human beings.
This show is part reflection, part reminder. We're not broken, we're on a journey of growth. Please note that this conversation should not be taken as medical or professional advice. See the link in the description below if you require immediate help.
Every week, we unpack what it means to choose joy. Not the loud version that Karen is peddling, but the quiet, hard-earned kind that comes from finally feeling like yourself again.
Let's keep this conversation going. Join us on Discord or connect to a peer through Kindred. Let's get into it.
It's not that it's personal. It is something that I'm very well accustomed with.
Yeah.
Because, okay, so especially in the West, in America, freedom is a big ordeal. We grow up with these ideals ingrained into us.
We do.
I mean, you look, and I'm not trying to, not to get political or weird in the first opening 2 minutes, but if you look at things like gender identity in children, and small children below 10 or 12, that is a sign that we are given a lot of freedoms from a very, very young age. And it's not just, I mean, that's an extreme example, but that's only one. Now, that's wonderful and that's great that we have so many options. However, what happens? Nah, I don't want to, that's not right either.
Yeah.
Mm, It doesn't always work out so well, I guess, is more so what I'm getting at. And it
I think many options. That's what you're referring to. Having so many
yes.
options.
hmm We discussed this a little bit with decisions when we were talking about collapsing decisions. I think this is really good. Okay, so we talked about it with decisions episodes. But when we have too many options, what ends up happening is most, not all, because there are, we'll get into that. Most don't know what the fuck they want in the first place. I work with a lot of kids that are like, I don't know what the fuck to do. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. And every single time I talk to them, the same thing gets repeated out of my head. Just do something. Just do something. It doesn't matter what it is that you do. I'm going to use, I'm going to create a fictitious example here. Let's say I'm torn between sports and music and whatever. If I pick one of them, whether that be sports or whether that be music, inevitably, I'm going to get closer to what I want to do anyway, because I've just introduced a very interesting paradox into my life. The more options that we actually have, the harder it is to move forward. So while we think that freedom is great, and while we think that freedom is wonderful, and freedom is very good, I'm not here to attack freedom. I'm not here to attack the way we do things in America. That's not what I'm
What
saying.
I think when we're using the word freedom has many definition, well, not necessarily many connotations and many attributes. We're not talking about like, leave my apple pie alone at that kind of.
Marca! No.
We're not talking about that kind of freedom. We're talking about person like on a daily basis, like you are have the ability, even if you there are laws restricting you generally, you as an individual have many ability to make different choices in your life to kind of like through the day or get to whenever you want to go. That's the kind of freedom we are referring to, not overarching freedom, if that makes sense.
Yes, and before we get there, because you're moving us to our next segment, which is fine. I'm not, but I just want to I just want to highlight one thing. Some of the most successful kids that I've ever met in this lifetime knew what they wanted to do, or maybe not knew. Maybe they didn't know, but they found something that they enjoyed doing and kept with it and stayed with it. They weren't jumping around from idea to idea to idea to idea to idea. Took something.
right here. 'Cause I could tell you, I was in an Uber yesterday, and or the day before, I can't remember. My life is a big whole mess with the days, with the times now. Um, and I was talking to my Uber driver was somebody. He was on my age, so we got to talking as I was going to the place, and he was like, "Oh, hey, what are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, I'm at school. I need to do medicine." And he was like, "How long have you done that?" And I was like, "Huh, no." And I was like, "Oh, I kind of decided in eighth grade that I wanted to be a doctor and have not looked back since." And I was like, for the past 10, going on 11 years, I have had a goal in mind, and I have not literally not wavered one bit on it.
Yeah. No, it's a big it's life-changing when you have direction and you have that one idea that you're like, "This is where I'm going to go." Whether it is where you end up, whether it is what you wanna do exactly or not, doesn't matter. It doesn't. W It's really interesting because if you look at it from a comparison of East and West. West is, American ideals. We're free. We can do whatever we want. Go and explore and do whatever, and let the kids decide. If you look at the East, you look at places like China. Those kids they don't get options. And I'm not knocking that. I'm not trying to make anybody sound bad. They are told this is what you should do. Go do them, and then once you get through them, there will be plenty of time later to go and do what you want. Which to me, that makes more sense based off of the information that I currently hold inside of my
Interesting, because
working
I'm
life.
like I know speaking of China, literally, they will go to kindergarten and they'll literally look at body for sports or IQ, and they'll literally look at body types and be like, okay, you know what? This kid, soccer player. This kid, gymnastic. This kid, hockey. This kid, this sport. And
Mhm,
you are then literally placed in a in basically a camp that is designed to nourish that talent, whether you like it or not. So that's the part. Whether it's a natural desire or even a choice you would have ever made for yourself,
mhm.
you that kind of gets skipped versus I mean, at least here, people usually try 5, 6 sports and then usually stick with one. Sometimes you're lucky, you'll try the first one and it'll be like, hell yeah, we're gonna do this.
Mhm. Yeah, but that's a big difference between, "Oh, go try this sport and let me know if you like it," and, "Hey, man, we're gonna put you here and you're going to do this." And because of the way that that system is set up, nobody questions it, and that's okay. Again, that's the reason why it works. If I don't question it, if I don't think, "Oh, maybe there's a different way," or I don't maybe not think that there's a different way or believe that there's a better way, then I I don't know. I'm not it's not to say that one is better versus the other, but what our goal is to talk about how to get over those kinds of issues with having too many options. That's really our goal, but I did wanna at least highlight what it looks like so that you can kind of, make those decisions, and I don't want people to kinda get turned off because we're not advocating for any system here. I'm literally just trying to explain this is where it is, and it's interesting because, especially in the West, we really do resist constraint, and because we don't wanna limit anything. We wanna be open to any and all possibilities. We see this in mainstream media all over the place. Leave your options open. I've been told that before in my lifetime.
Yeah.
Go for this, but leave your options open. People tell me not to go ahead and throw an apple at my boss. I'm not saying I was thinking about throwing an apple, but
It's the idea of don't burn your bridges because you never know when that option needs to come back, and it needs to be something you need to follow on, whether it's a reference or you need to kind of crawl back to that old job and be like, need to feed my
Mhm,
family. Can I get a job
right.
here? I worked here and I was a decent employee.
But if it's dead, if the whole thing is done, I'm never going back to warehouse work ever again. Does it really matter that I'm gonna fucking burn that bridge? Probably not.
Probably not.
But
Mm,
and based off of everything that we're gonna talk about, it shouldn't. It really shouldn't matter. That shouldn't even be an option. It shouldn't be an option to go back if you are moving forward. Because that leaves open that idea. But again, all this does is add to that feeling of, I mean, look how resistant you are to that idea. You're like, well, I don't know, man.
it really is. I don't know because it's yes, I agree with the sentiment 100. If I am moving forward, there is no, you shouldn't be looking back. But sometimes, in order to move forward, you mean it's the idea of sometimes or you might be moving forward, but you may have to look back just slight. It's the what, which we'll get into. It's the what ifs. It's the fear and the what ifs of the future.
Yeah,
But it's that thing
yeah,
of, well, what if I have to look back? So should I just, because you never, it's the idea of, we'll get into this in more detail, but like, it's unpredictable. I don't know what,
sure.
I don't know what tomorrow's gonna look like. So it's that thing of, if I close this door 112%, meaning there's even a small sliver of chance that this door can open. You, in a way, it's at the moment it might be freeing, but then what if you're moving forward, and then you're like, oh, maybe I left my left shoe in there. I need to kind of go back and pick up my left shoe. So it's the idea of the what if and the fears attached to it, which we'll go later in as we get to this discussion.
But the what ifs don't matter. When you decided that you wanted to be a doctor, do we get the what ifs about being a doctor?
No, 'cause I find that to be a different decision than some other decisions.
Okay. Well, let me ask you, is becoming a doctor a constraint that you put on yourself?
No,
What?
I don't view it
How do
as
you
one.
figure? Are you
I
going to
don't
go
view
be
it
a
as one.
basketball player as a doctor?
Sorry, say that again?
Are you going to go be a basketball player instead of a doctor?
Most likely not, because I have bad knees.
Okay. Most well, all right, my bad. I'm so sorry. Are you Are you going to pursue a degree in the humanities and languages instead of becoming a doctor?
Most likely not.
So that is a self-imposed constraint that you put on yourself at a relatively young age, and then that eliminated those what ifs. Did it not? Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't, that's the way I see it, but I
N no, because what's it called? For a minute, I was a double major with international relations, so I was doing other passions of mine. So those doors weren't completely closed, but I will admit one of the main reasons I was doing that was to be able to work as a doctor without borders, or potentially after retiring, using that degree to work maybe for the UN in a medical capacity. So it is all
so it's I
related
it no,
to
it's another
the goal.
constraint that you put on. I mean, like, it's okay. I'm not knocking it. I think it's great. It's a perfect. It is perfectly highlights exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about resistance to constraints. You're telling me that you put one on yourself and you're like, but I have to leave my options.
But see, it is so weird that I don't. The problem is I don't view it as a constraint. That's the thing. I agree with what you're saying, but
Mhm.
to me, it's not really a constraint. It's like I made this decision and I'm just following it through. That's just how I view it. I don't view it as any other
That
type
I
of
mean,
constraint, because I don't view as myself as limited in doing all these other things, doing like other things I'm passionate about, let's say. Let's put it that way.
right.
But I just don't have the time, because maybe if I had all the time in the world and maybe I had like three twins that could all be in three places I was, maybe I could be doing more, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand. I'm still gonna push back and say it is 100% the definition of a constraint. Whether we see it as that or not, and maybe that's part of the problem. Who knows? That could very well be part of the issue is that we don't see that
I
as a
and
constraint.
I think that it is because when you said that's a constraint, I was like, "Oh, no, it's really not." Just like, I did this, and I'm just going going down the line, and then to me, but when you use it definitionally, it is a constraint because I made a choice. I'm sticking
Mhm.
to that choice. I'm not. I'm deviating. I might deviate, but it's within a very marginal deviation. Maybe instead of being a neurosurgeon, I'll be what's it called, an ENT, or instead of being an ENT, I'll be a neurologist. So it's still the same thing, but it's just within a small wiggle room of
Right.
deviation.
I would so it's interesting because I've been on both sides of the coin a little bit. So studying art, that's a fucking fair game, dude. They're like, "Hey, here's what we need. Go build me a wooden sculpture that is at least this size that has some sort of whatever and have fun explaining your choices." Basically, is what it was. I mean, there's no, you had constraints, but they were stupid minimal. You had to use this technique or do things only this way, but that's not, it's hard to work like that. It's very difficult to manage that way.
Yeah.
And not everybody is very good at it. I'm not
I
trying to
mean,
be an
that's very
ass,
true.
but
So is it sometimes are constraints self-dependent on industry? Because with sometimes within the science world, because the thing is sometimes because I'm just thinking about it because I had an assignment in class where literally the instructions were write a paragraph. Uh, th- no kidding, like literally write one paragraph, and we got our score back. What's it called? Most people, nobody got 100, and everybody was like, "Well, what do you?" Because everybody's trying to become a doctor, so everybody's like, "Wait, what do you want me to do? I need you to lay exactly the constraints of all these different things in order." And we were like going back and forth with the teacher, and the teacher was like, "Well, I just want this," and she was being very vague about it.
Mhm.
And people were getting, including myself,
I'm sure.
visibly frustrated. We were like, "No, you can't say do this open anything and then also grin and be like, well, you guys are not meeting the what I want." So it's like, well, are we not meeting because you didn't tell us what to meet? So
Mhm.
sometimes I think what happens is depending on how your brain is wired, really it is how your brain is wired. If you're more of a creative versus if you're more of like
I'm gonna push back, but keep going, sorry.
yeah, or if you're more of a what's it called? How would I categorize it? More of tech or science minded person, or one plus one is always equal to two, or best thing is always these things are always self evident and therefore true. You want more of that constraint because you want to be able to be like, I met the target, I did the target to the best of my ability. Yeah, you might have some creative flourishes in there, but you got the answer versus in art and more of the creative mindedness, there is more freedom to express yourself and for things to go wrong and to accept that. At least I feel. I could be wrong.
Okay, so I'm just gonna pose this question. There's a lot of really good stuff in what you said, and I'm super excited to get to all of it. But I just want to ask this one question first. Is engineering not a creative discipline?
My answer is no, it's not.
That would be incorrect.
Oh,
Engineering is a
that's why I
hundred percent.
hesitated. I hesitated because I
No, I
see
know.
why it's creative, but I'm saying
Right.
it.
I'm telling you, this was a hard pill for me to swallow going from art to systems and information thinking because it involves engineering, it involves all of these things. And so you have to work within constraints. But working with constraints doesn't make you any less creative. It
Oh,
all it
that's
does is
true.
it shifts how that creativity not it's not exhibit, what the fuck am I thinking? Presents itself, right?
Yeah,
That's okay. And so the interesting thing that you were sitting there and you were describing in your example with your teacher, there was no predictability in your environment, correct? Or
yeah,
whatever with that assumption.
Yeah.
that let your nervous system run wild and try to figure out what the fuck was going on. And then increase the amount of decisions that you had to make because you don't know what it could have been. It could have been from 8 million different things. And so that's a problem. Cognitively, that's an issue. However, if you had been given the constraints, all of that chaotic mess would have been gone. And then you could have stepped in, said, hey, this is what I need to do. I need to do X, Y, and Z, and everything is going to be okay. And maybe there's something to understanding how to operate in such a, I'm going to call it a, oh, sorry.
See,
A
go ahead. Finish your sentence, and then I'll respond.
Okay. I'm going to call it a blue sky environment, where everything is entirely open. And I think there's a valid experience in knowing how to do that.
Yeah.
But there's also when it comes to self-imposed constraints, self-imposed, not others imposed. I'm not about imposing constraints on people. Maybe in younger children because they don't know what the fuck they want. They don't know anything. And I don't mean that in a bad way. They've got some knowledge, but they don't. Whatever. I'm not even gonna go down that road. Fuck that shit. But it's a very interesting how when we limit the amount of decisions that we have and we put those self-imposed constraints, we become more free because it frees up our mind to worry about the things that we actually need to take care of the things that we actually need to. And then it actually ends up supporting our creativity, right? Because the more structured we are, the easier it is to actually, again, creativity is impossible if you're constantly overloaded. It just doesn't work. I've talked about that before.
Yeah.
So I want you to speak.
I was going to say it might be really environment dependent because, for example, in medicine, there isn't really you can't unless you're doing research or all these other. But if you're just straight medicine, there really is no. Maybe you can do. There's some small creativity on how you might suture because that's a personal choice and a stylish flair. But there really isn't. Creativity, and I think that's where I think the problem out because I think I would have been more fine if I was like in art school or like in a theater class and I was told to write a script and I got it because then I'm like, oh, there's so many things that could be wrong with my
Mhm.
with the script that I wrote or the scene that I wrote or the scene that I performed. So I'll be more willing for the feedback of not getting things perfect. But in medicine, where ultimately there might be one or two answers because that's how we were really, unfortunately, really trained to view it as. Because when
Sure.
you take your board exams, you are given 10 options. Sometimes there, half of the options are just going to be factually incorrect. Let's put it that way. Some of them may not really address it. And then there are two or three that based on reading or interpreting, you can easily be misled. But ultimately, there really is only one answer. There's not more than one answer. It just really is one. So if you are training people to view things as really one, maybe two or three options, they're really because you are really limited in what you can do. For example, if a patient comes and they have 30,000 allergies to all these, you are only really limited to a bunch. You can't really be, well, let me be creative because ultimately you have a patient's life on the line, if that makes sense.
No, of course it does. That makes complete sense. But being the means of, and I don't want to say the means of being a doctor because I don't agree with that statement by any stretch of the imagination, but the means of taking care of people and ensuring that they are healthy and whatever, you don't have a lot of wiggle room. The only wiggle room that you really have is understanding the patient as a whole in order to be able to say, "Oh, okay, this rules out this, and this."
Yeah.
That's not creating anything new. That's not what you're concerned about. That is, if you think about it like going from 0 to 1, you're not going from 0 to 1. When you are a doctor, you are given 1. Do you know what I mean? You are given the information. The place where you get to be creative is in research and conducting medical research, and starting from whatever. I think that this nerve may be connected. Who the fuck knows? I'm not
Whatever.
a
Yeah,
doctor.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I think that that's where the creativity comes in. But however, inherently, when it comes to taking care of patients, it can't be, you can't get creative. That's,
Yeah.
we have those laws to kind of protect against that. So you guys just are given one and said, hey, here's where it goes. And that's okay. But that's not a constraint necessarily. That's just, this is the way that we have to do things in order to take care of people.
Actually, like, okay, not that I'm working on my trauma from from that paper. What's it called? But the professor that did the assignment, she is primarily like a researcher. Like
Mhm.
she is she lost like a class, but like she is a PhD. She is not an MD. Like versus because I think that explains the difference because like
Mhm.
she might be explaining more this like abstract, have these
Mhm.
abstract expectations because that's her field.
Right.
But when you're teaching people who like every single day they're like, well, you're like blah 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 blah. It's not quite right. It's almost there,
Right.
but it's really dense. You get in
Right.
the mindset of being like, okay, well, there's really only one maybe at best. There's a second option, but then I'm kind of close up to literally all the other million
Right.
possibilities in the world.
No, I would agree with that, and I think that it's that just boils down to communication then, and is a little bit unfortunately beyond our scope of things. I would love to talk about maybe one day we'll get there, but today not so much. But I think that does highlight a good point. Is there are certain things that are going to be creative in nature. There are things that aren't going to be creative in nature. When it comes to me, like picking up and putting a box on a pallet, there's nothing creative about that. I have to pick up the box. I have to put it there. There's a best way of doing that for our body's design because we don't want to get injured. The act of picking up and putting a box, no creativity. The idea of how we can maximize that process, there's a lot of creativity involved in. Do you see what I'm saying?
I agree. Because I was gonna say, well, there, pick you up a bus. You can do it with a flourish. That's some creativity to it. I mean,
Sure, sure.
ultimately,
We can make it all pretty and fancy, but like it's
do it
not.
on point.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from.
No,
That's
I'm
yeah.
I'm just literally messing with you,
No,
but like
I hear
ultimately,
you.
like you are just moving the thing from here to there. Like, sure, you can have all the
Right.
flourishes ultimately, but like you are taking this and putting it there. Like there's not much, no matter how much dance or twirls you put in between you picking up the box. We might say that's creative and everything, but ultimately your goal is still the same thing. You've moved the one thing and put it on the other side.
Hmm. Yeah, and I I do believe that self-imposed constraints are really the way to do that. Do you know what I mean? We When we self-impose constraints, we watch lives shift. I don't want to go too deep because we've gone trying to think of where I want to take this. I want to stick more with what we've been talking about, but I'm trying to figure out how to go. I guess we've kind of already hit it. We kind of already hit that constraints are we talked about it in terms of disciplines. We talked about constraints and in terms of academic disciplines. There are clear constraints in engineering. There are clear constraints in computer science. There are a lack of constraints in some disciplines, and that's okay. That's where you get things like the humanities and why people find them to be 100% useless in terms of tangible work output, or at least for employees, not necessarily for outputting work, because you do need those blue sky thought processes. We need those lack of constraints, but in order to operate inside of those lack of constraints, some place in our life must be constrained. It has to happen. And not externally, because that removes our sense of autonomy. That removes our sense of agency. Intentional constraints that we impose are entirely different. We have to have autonomy over the choices that we make. It has been documented in psychological research. Autonomy is a big deal. And us feeling like we did it ourselves opens up doors that we didn't prior previously have if A, we have no constraints, or B, we have externally imposed constraints. Externally imposed constraints suck. That is what drives things like rebellion, things like revolution. If there are too many external constraints, that's where we tend to gravitate towards. That's a part of humanity. That's you take away our autonomy, and there begins to be a real big problem. When we make a commitment and we go ahead and choose the rules for us, we're playing a different game. It's entirely different because it shifts from, oh man, I have to do this to this is what I know I need to do in order to make my life where I want it to be. It may not be better or worse. There's no, that's up to you to decide when you start to see the fruits of your labor. However, again, that key decision being it's up for you to decide when that actually happens. And then what comes with that, with those intentional constraints, is we get more clarity. If we get more clarity, why? Because what we talked about before with the cognitive overload, your neural system running fucking haywire, and a lack of predictive environment, you get all three of those back. So, so you've reduced cognitive load. You've settled down your nervous system to be able to make predictable decisions about your environment. Bam, you've got everything that you need for autonomy back, which is why it can feel like you are more free. You're more open. Shit, man. If I know I'm doing, again, it kind of comes back to I use the example of, and you made that fantastic comment about me wanting everybody to live the autistic life. However, I would argue that you are already living inside of an autistic person's dream world. You just aren't aware of it. But that's a side note that we don't need to go down. When I've taken that decision of make it what I have to make for dinner off the table every day, my nervous system is calm. It's predictable. It's already there. I don't have to worry about it. So when it comes to dinner time, if I want to make something fucking different, I get to make something different. It's great. So recently haven't been deciding what to make, but the how I make it is what it is. So basically I make large sushi rolls with whatever
Mhm.
I made. It doesn't matter whether that be fish, chicken, veggies. I just throw it all into a rice wrap and just roll it up and cut it and eat that shit. Why? It's super fucking easy. I can do it with leftovers. It's been one of the it's been a serious game changer, especially with the recovery from surgery and everything. Super fucking helpful. That is an example of that self-imposed constraint. This is how I'm going to cook. It frees me up to then go ahead and make different decisions. I'm just throwing cooked food inside of rice and seaweed and wrapping it up and eating it. By making that constraint, it freed me up to actually be like, oh, I wonder what this is like. Maybe we can
Yeah,
just try it.
I see
And
what you
it's just
mean.
an easy way of intaking food. That's all it is at this point. We've had chicken for the past 2 days that I cut up into slices. I have a bunch of extra rice, throw the rice on, put the chicken, put the veggies in. Super easy. I don't have to heat anything up. I don't have to worry about fork. I don't have to worry about shit because it's all right there. But again, that is only possible because of the constraint of I know how I am going to cook for this period of time. But that came, and then that all stemmed from this is what I'm going to do on Monday. This is what I'm going to do on Tuesday. This is what I'm going to do on Wednesday. It allowed that system to evolve naturally. However, without those constraints, you can't evolve systematically because systems require constraints in order to operate.
They
It
do.
doesn't, it makes no difference. I can't, if I think about like an engine as a system, I can't get to the head gaskets without taking the top piece of the, depending on power model, whatever, without taking the top part of the engine off. If I try to skip that part, it just bypass that constraint. It's not going to end well for anybody. We must operate inside of those constraints in order to get that freedom back. And again, it's not about losing freedom. You are constantly choosing where it is that you are going to go. Earlier, you had mentioned something, and I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. You were talking about how, right at the beginning of everything, shit. It was a good one too. Um,
What was it? What was like the idea? And then maybe I can pull it.
something about, um, oh, that's what it was. Okay. You had made the claim that life wasn't predictable.
Yeah.
I'm going to push back and I'm going to say that life is, definitely not. Life is predictable to an extent, right? No. So this is the idea of predictive processing, right? Our brain is constantly predicting sensory stimuli around us and taking that
Yeah.
information, choosing what we need to do. So to some extent, life is predictable.
Like,
So,
yes. Okay. I see the point you're trying to make. I see it. I'm going to see it. Go ahead. I get it, and I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, but my answer is still no. But go ahead.
so if, but so think about it. If we are constantly predicting everything that is around us, if we have a plan, if we have constraints that we have imposed, not that have come from outside, because outside constraints are
Self-imposed. Well,
unpredictable. External
unpredictable. Okay.
constraints are unpredictable.
Yeah,
I
predictable.
can't.
Yeah.
I know I've brought him up before, but there's a book called Black Swan. Is it Black Swan? Oh fuck, is it over there? I don't know where it is. No, it was the Anti-Fragile book. But in it, he mentions, I think he did do a book on it too. I don't fucking remember. It was a long time ago I read that shit. But he talks about black swan events, things that nobody can see coming. They happen regardless. You're walking down the street and a fuck bus just pulls up onto the sidewalk and you're like, whoa! That's an unpredictable event. Nobody's gonna. Who the fudge is gonna predict that while they're walking down the street? You might think it, but chances of it happening are
Look.
that is
Yeah.
an external event that you had no control over, you had no prediction over. However, when it comes to our consciousness and our understanding, we have a pretty good path to being able to predict how we are going to operate, act, and engage with the world around us. So if we come up, and this is really ties in a lot with agency because it's what we choose. It is our responsibility. We are doing this. So if I commit to something, or I let me say it, I don't want to say commit yet. I don't, that's not the right word. Sorry. If I have a plan and I know where it is that I'm going, I've made the conscious choice to impose this constraint on myself.
Mhm.
I know where it is that I'm going. This is where we get that idea where you can't fail, provided you are doing something. Because if you are doing something, you are taking action towards what it is that is going on. We've developed a plan. So to some extent, our world has just become this much more predictable. And maybe, just maybe, and that's not saying that the whole world is predictable because that's for shit. And I would never make that claim. However, it allows our nervous system to be able to predict in the immediacy some of the sensory information that we are going to be receiving, thereby reducing our cognitive load, allowing our nervous system to function properly the way that it needs to, rectifying prediction errors. Because if we are riddled with prediction errors, we are inevitably we are overloaded cognitively. It's not even a maybe. We can't operate in that realm without the minimization of prediction errors.
Yeah.
This is a major ordeal as to where that agency comes back. We have to make a commitment on something. I don't give a shit what it is. If you really, I will tell you. So I got here to where I'm standing today. I remember it like it was fucking yesterday. We were running to the beach. It's almost 4 miles to run to the beach, right? And so we're running and we're almost to the beach. And all I did was I made one comment about how I loved the the architecture of the houses that are down closer toward the water. I was like, they're just super cool. And he literally looked at me and goes, dude, why don't you just go back to school for architecture? I was like, huh. Okay, I can do that. That sounds actually really cool. I like that idea. And that is exactly what I did. I got into Maryland for their architecture program. And within a week, realized that there was absolutely no chance that I was going to be able to complete the degree within a decade. And I was like, there is no fucking way. I've already been in school for a decade. We're done with that. I'm going to go switch to art. Not because I wanted to study art, but because that's where my credits made sense. And so that was okay. And then I'm in art school and I'm talking to one of my professors and he's like, "Well, if you really, really like the technology side of things, why don't you go look into the HCI program? Because that is gonna bridge that gap between art and here, and you can go about doing this." I had zero intention of doing anything with either technology, cognition, psychology, any of that stuff. I had none. But making that decision, making that commitment, applying. Dude, I almost shit myself when I got into Maryland. I was like, what the fuck? Damn. Like Maryland's not an easy school to get into. And I certainly was not a stellar student in high school. And so making that commitment and then taking that action every single day has led me to exactly where the fuck I wanted to go anyway. By imposing that one constraint. I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And I'm going to do this. And then working my way back to figuring out, all right, well, what are the skills and the talents that I have in order to get to this and to get to this, to get to this. That same person gave me a long workbook to work through that because he was on boards that helped artists start businesses and things like that, or taught them business of being an artist. And so one of the exercises is write an obituary and then work your way back. What do you want your life to look like at each and every level? It's a weird exercise, man.
Yeah.
It's super weird.
I've heard people done that before.
Oh
People will
yeah.
have that for like their birthday. They'll be like, "Pretend I'm
Yeah.
dead. What would you say about me?"
I did it myself. I didn't ask other people because I know what people are going to say. What a dick. Oh no.
He lived. You know what? He was a person and he lived.
Outrageous asshole. But again, none of it is possible without that understanding, that commitment, those self-imposed constraints, okay? So what has happened more and more and more and more and more. Yes, I started off with going back to school for architecture. That constraint made my world from here to here. And then going to art, well, that made it a little bit smaller. Then going to tech, that made it a little bit smaller. Over time, all I've done is iteratively
That road.
add self-imposed constraints. And the more constrained that I get, interestingly enough, the happier I am, the freer I am, the more that the right things end up finding me.
Yeah.
And
And
I say that because, again, we don't know. That's the thing that we have no control over. We don't know the outcome. Without those commitments, without that agency, without those self-imposed constraints, none of it's not possible.
yeah, it's,
I
I
shouldn't
mean,
I
it's,
can't make that claim, but
you're reducing the amount of fear, you're reducing the amount of unpredictable, because if you have very, because going back to my Uber driver that I was talking to,
Mhm.
he said, well, he didn't know what to do. He was like, well, I have so many options. I'm like, I might try a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but he does not know what he, because he's trying so many different things that he does not know what he wants. He has an idea
Right.
of what he wants, but he's not truly really made the commitment and then stuck with the constraint of that commitment and then just
Mhm.
following it through. And it is, and I think what may could be stopping him is what stops a lot of people is not knowing the outcome, because no outcome is guaranteed. So if you are going to give yourself this self-imposed constraint, and an outcome is not necessarily guaranteed, do you even want to start in the first place?
Is no outcome guaranteed?
Your desired, I should rephrase, not no outcome is your desired outcome may not be guaranteed.
How do we have a desired outcome if we don't know what we want?
Well, you may think, oh, look, I don't know, I want to go to law school and become, I don't know, the next Supreme Court justice. That's ludicrous, for most people. But
Yeah.
if that is the thing that end up happening ultimately is you end up shifting those outcomes as you move again. My example being like maybe a brain surgeon, then I'm like, you know what, with the training and my health and all these different things, I'm tired. I don't know if I want to be a neurosurgeon, because like that's too many years. So you shift it a little, like I adjusted my constraint within my path, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Right.
But,
But
but I
again,
don't think go ahead.
that wasn't what you wanted. I didn't know what I wanted. I thought I knew what I wanted. I went and I took action and I thought I knew, and this is what I was going to do. But I took action and I got closer to what it is that I actually wanted. So some outcome is guaranteed to happen. Chances
Yeah,
are your desired outcome is going to happen provided you are actively taking action towards something that is meaningful, that provides positive affect for you, and isn't intentionally harmful to other people. As long as you're not pursuing, I would venture out to say that even that's not accurate, but simply because you can definitely get what you don't want. Our and maybe this is a little bit outside the scope, but especially for where we're at in the conversation, and maybe we'll come back to it at a different time. We can 100% be working towards things that we don't want. We can definitely be taking actions towards things that will actively hurt ourselves and other people. Case in point, right? I woke up most days in high school without any form of self-prescribed medication, and I can assure you that by the end of the day, every single day, I had found that medication more than one time. Do you know what I'm saying? It makes no difference. Some outcome will always happen provided I take action.
that's true.
And I hear what you're saying. You are right. There are definitely that is what stops a lot of people. Well, what if I don't get what I want? What if I don't get this? What if this doesn't happen? Who gives a fuck? If you start taking action, all those what ifs disappear and it doesn't matter anymore. We saw that with your example. The second that I was a fucking head case for what if. What if this doesn't happen? What if I don't do this? What if I can't do this? Maybe I can't. Maybe I won't. but I'm going to do something, and I'm going to do something cool, and I'm going to do something that I want to do. And provided all of that is in place and you've made that commitment and you're taking those actions, you're going to be just fine. I will leave with some reflection prompts. Where are you experiencing stress because you have too many options? What recurring decision could you just go ahead and automate and set it and forget it?
Yeah.
And what boundary could you institute that wouldn't overload you? And I think if you can answer those questions, you can kind of begin to pay attention to where your life may need constraints, but also think about where is one constraint that you could add that would reduce anything, literally anything for you. By imposing these constraints, we don't eliminate our freedom. It doesn't stop us from being able to go shoot fireworks on the 4th of July or eat whatever the fuck you want to, but they allow you to make use of the freedom that we have been given. Thanks for listening, everybody. Carlos and I greatly appreciate it. Comment something that resonated with you today. We are here for support, feedback, or anything else that you want to share. Join us on the Kindred app, a perfect space to keep unpacking what came up during the episode. Get live, peer-to-peer support from people with shared experiences. Kindred is built for those moments that no one else sees.
Take this one step deeper by reviewing today's reflection prompt in the show notes. Please don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and tune in next week for a new episode. Until next time, choose joy.